sensing this danger. This is the greatest showman! He is floating on air now!
He's going to send it back. Gone. Bang! Down he goes.
They love it!
Hello and welcome to the NEMBC's Multicultural AFL Footy Panel Show. It was a tumultuous week for the AFL, both on and off the field. 4 shock results and a postponed game between Melbourne and Essendon after Essendon's Connor McKenna tested positive to COVID-19. What the next week brings is anybody's guess, as the media and footy public wait for the consequences of the Bombers virus test and how many senior players and officials from the club will have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. Interesting times. Moving forward, we also have George Grosios, our resident expert, talking to Gabriel earlier today about recent results and the current virus situation, a threat not only to Essendon, but the league as well. I am Vanessa Gatica, and I'm joined by my 2 co-panelists, Javier Sincang and Gabriel D'Angelo. Hello, guys.
Hello, Vanessa.
Vanessa, Javier.
So moving on, after a series of bad results and the Bombers testing positive to the COVID-19 virus, it is indeed an unprecedented AFL season. Thursday night, the Tigers at the MCG took on the Hawks and lost badly, while on Friday night, the Doggies humbled the Giants at Marvel Stadium. I picked the Doggies to win, and they did. Javier, you must have enjoyed the game too.
Yeah, I enjoyed the game because of the fact that they won. But otherwise, I still think that Bulldogs need a lot of polishing at the moment because the number of chances they are missing at the moment. Their pressure is great. The way Liberatore has come back in, and the way McLean, although he's not ranked like too many disposals in that game, but still he had a very big influence. So that has made the others come good too. So the midfield was there. We saw it. So it was a good pressure game and everything, but still they need to get some more results, more goals. That's what's gonna make a difference. It's also the fact that they were a bit depleted, GWS at the moment, so that contributed as well. Whitfield going early, that contributed to their loss. But whoever was on ground was more focused on physicality and just making a point to Bulldogs rather than playing the actual skillful game. I think that was the result. That's why we see this result.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Vanessa. When you tipped the Bulldogs, I thought, okay, she's had too much tequila again. But they were brilliant. They were great. And you can tell that the Bulldogs and GWS, they are now a legit rivalry. They hate each other's guts. And I think that was also partly why GWS did so badly. They played the man rather than the ball. But congratulations to the Bulldogs. But on another note, Richmond, who were also grand finalists last year like GWS, they are having a really bad start. It's amazing how badly they're performing at the moment. Again, they haven't cracked 40 points. So in the second game 36 and this game 39. It's sort of hard to believe that Richmond, having been so dominant last year and having so many amazing players, can't really seem to buy a goal at the moment. I don't know if it's because Hawthorn was so fantastic and Collingwood was so good. That's why Richmond did so badly. Maybe they'll play better against a weak opposition like St Kilda this week. Time will tell, but it's amazing what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Richmond, I think they will come back. They were just due for a loss, that's all.
Another huge upset was Carlton, which just hung on to win by 2 points at Geelong, notching their first win at the Qatari for 24 years. Gabriel, what are your thoughts?
I thought Carlton, that was the win they needed. They were fantastic. They were great. They deserved that victory. Also, on another note, I think that it was great to see that Carlton playing the way that Geelong normally play, Academia Park, that sort of high intensity, high pressure, forcing the other team to make mistakes, counter-attacking and all that sort of stuff. It was a fantastic performance, and Eddie Betts, unbelievable. He played so well. I mean, that's the type
Amazing.
of play. That's what a champion and a leader does. He just brings that team forward with him. And that disappointment of that 1 point loss against Melbourne is just completely gone now. Having beaten Geelong in Geelong, playing Geelong style, it was fantastic. But also at the same time, you have to say that Geelong, they lost that game too. I mean, they had 3 opportunities in the space of about a minute, and they blew at least 2 of them. Grimes, he's in front of goal, he's got the ball. Instead of just taking the free kick, he went and played on and was behind. Gary Ablett Jr., I mean, a player...
last goal, yeah.
Exactly, a player of his stature, winning all those Brownlow medals and Little Master and all that sort of stuff, right in front of goals, 20 metres out. He's supposed to score those, and he missed.
Yeah.
He's a leader of the team. You compare him to Eddie Betts' performance in that game. He really should have scored that goal. And then you've got Radagolea. He had a really bad game, but when he stopped Tom Hawkins' clear goal on the line, what was he thinking?
No,
so not only did Carlton deserve that victory, but Geelong, they lost it themselves. I don't know if they didn't give Carlton the respect that they deserved.
Yeah, if they would have started giving that sort of pressure to Carlton in third quarter, things could have been different, but they left it too late. And credit to Eddie Betts and Eddie Betts only, the way he performed, he was everywhere. And he, as you mentioned, he just led the team to the victory. Otherwise, I think they had lost it in the fourth quarter, Carlton. It would have been one of another sad stories with Carlton, but Eddie Betts, he was a difference that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just saw a different Carlton. Like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. We saw a different Carlton, and unfortunately, I saw a different St Kilda. But I was expecting them to do not so great against Collingwood. I mean, let's be honest, it was boys against men. St Kilda, especially Cofield in defence, way too many unforced errors. Just passing the ball to the opposition in the 50-metre area. A team against like Collingwood, you're going to give the ball away so cheaply. It's like, here, you score the goal. And in the second quarter when St Kilda really needed to pressure Collingwood, and they were getting close. So a lot of really bad unforced errors from St Kilda's point of view, and it also proves that, like I said last week, it was the way they played against the Bulldogs, fantastic, but there's still a long way to go. I was disappointed about that, but a great win by Collingwood. They're the real deal.
Yeah, that was St Kilda's test, but I'm sorry, but. Yeah, I think they failed in that.
Yeah.
So,
no, they did.
And talking about the test, I believe North Melbourne had a kind of test too, and they had a point to prove that if they are a consistent team or not. When they beat GWS, Zach Zibel was all guns blazing, and he's like, oh yeah, we want to stay in there, we want to be North Melbourne, we don't want to move anywhere or anything like that. So this was like a good test, and they probably lacked that spark in them in that game. And that sort of gave in to Sydney. Sydney, to their credit, they played well and they deserve that win.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Let's move on now to the other results. Brisbane defeating the West Coast Eagles, Port Power beating Fremantle, and the Gold Coast rolling Adelaide big time. Javier, how bad was Adelaide?
What do you mean bad? They are the best contenders for the wooden spoon at the moment. Well, yeah, they're not at the standard.
They miss Eddie Betts?
Yeah, they missed few of them.
And
they missed all of them.
On and on.
The Tex Walker, I don't really see him as a leader at the moment. He can't really do that. And then we have players who are not sort of understanding their jobs at the moment. We had this talk right at when we restarted the season that a couple of their players had an infight or so. So I mean, doesn't seem that anything is right at Adelaide at the moment. They need to come up with on-field plan and an off-field plan. It has been going on from years now, since that camp that they had, and it hasn't. It's not fallen in place for them.
Yeah.
So it's a lingering issue at the moment, and they really need to focus it, and they have to do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's going very bad for Adelaide at the moment.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, you both did, because part of what's going on at Adelaide is not necessarily on-field, but what's happening off-field. I mean, when you think about it, Adelaide getting absolutely demolished by their rivals, Port Adelaide, is one thing. Losing to Gold Coast so badly, only scoring 1 goal for the majority of the game, that's embarrassing. And then you've got players leaving, and then you've got the coach leaving, and you've got that camp where all this stuff happened. And before that, Adelaide were favourites to beat Richmond in the grand final.
Yep.
People were saying how great Adelaide were and the power stance and all that sort of stuff. This didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. This was 3 years ago.
Yep.
So to go from one extreme to the other and just
And so
do
quick.
so badly, so quickly. There's a lot of questions rather than answers going on at the Adelaide Football Club, but they are a mess. They're in a crisis.
Yeah. With other games, I think we were sort of expecting that Brisbane Lions well, and then so Fremantle, they were meant to lose.
Don't go anywhere, as we'll be back after the break with Gabriel's interview with our resident expert, George Grosius. See you on the other side of the break.
Welcome to the show, George.
Gabriel, thanks for having me.
George, we've seen so many favourites go down since the restart of the season, notably Richmond and GWS, who are last year's grand finalists. Any insights as to why they're doing so badly, even West Coast?
Richmond have been such a disappointment on resumption of the season. In the 2 games that we've had since the resumption, they've only kicked a handful of behinds in the first quarter, so they are goalless, which is a real surprise considering the talent they have up forward. Jack Higgins, Tom Lynch, Jack Riewoldt. I can't put my finger on why their forward line has been so dysfunctional. In fact, even their midfield hasn't had the same penetration, the same element of danger about it. They are very predictable in their ball movement, and it's a real surprise because when you look at the talent in both the midfield and the forward line, I can't understand why they haven't been able to score goals in those first quarters. Hawthorn really played well. They out-thought them, outplayed them. Clarkson is the master of tactics. But Richmond are so disappointing on the resumption. As I say, I can't figure out why they just can't string 4 quarters together, whether it's a fitness issue, whether, again, it's tactics. Those opening starts are going to be a real concern for Richmond moving forward. If we look at the West Coast Eagles, another disappointment this season, I'm not sure if they have adjusted to the hub in the professional manner that they should have. I don't think the players are committed to it. I think the players are all at sea. They are aimless. They are directionless. They haven't got anything out of their key forwards, Jack Darling, Josh Kennedy, and even their midfield, Tim Kelly, who was a huge recruit for them from Geelong. He's struggled to get into the play so far. So they have their problems as well. I think their problems are not only attitude, but also structure and fitness. GWS, last year's grand finalists, again, another disappointment so far. If we look at last week's performance against the Western Bulldogs, they went the fist rather than concentrating on playing the game on its merits. It was a technical blunder sending out Nick Haynes to do the coin toss. Why you wouldn't send out your captain, but instead send out one of your key players, Nick Haynes? They're trying to send a message to Footscray the Western Bulldogs, that we're not going to take any aggression from you. We're going to fight fire with fire. But you need to make a statement by sending out your captain for the coin toss. I know it's just a symbolic thing, but you need your captain to lead from the front. And speaking of the captain, Caniglio, he's been very disappointing this season. I know they can use the excuse that they didn't have Toby Green or Josh Kelly, but nevertheless, their focus was on being rough and aggressive rather than playing the ball. They had a disappointing loss to North Melbourne 2 weeks ago. They were the favourites against the Western Bulldogs, but they were disappointing the whole night. And they have some problems. I don't know how they're going to fix those in the short term. Yep, they'll get the key personnel back, but I think it's attitude with them as well.
What are your thoughts on how the AFL is handling the Eddie Betts online slur campaign?
Eddie Betts is an absolute marvel. He's a champion on and off the field. He demonstrated character and resilience to be able to back up that performance after all of the negativity and the racist taunts that he'd received. No human being should be subjected to that. To his credit, he came out against Geelong, total professional, and demonstrated what a champion he is. And his contribution was valuable. That tackle to save the game for Carlton was inspirational. And he's a role model. And I hope the AFL crack down a lot harder on racism within the sport. We don't want another situation where our Indigenous stars are hounded out of the game, as we saw with Adam Goods. That was an absolute travesty. So I hope that Eddie Betts continues to show resilience and courage, and the competition, the administration within the AFL continue to support him and stamp out racism. There's no place for it. Speaking of Carlton, it was a fantastic performance, and what a great achievement for the young Blues team.
The COVID-19 Essendon situation, what do you see happening to the Bombers moving forward? In fact, any of the AFL teams caught in a similar situation?
I really feel for Essendon supporters, having had to suffer through the drug saga for so many years, just as they were getting their seasons back on track last season and this season, they now have to contend with this latest scandal. I feel for Connor McKenna. I'm also wondering what role the COVID officer at Essendon's playing in all of this. Did McKenna actually consult with the COVID officer? All clubs, of course, have COVID officers that guide the players and give them advice about how to quarantine and how to socially distance. So I don't know how much information was disseminated to McKenna. He's unwittingly found himself in this particular drama. The full details of this case are yet to be known. Apparently he went house hunting and contracted COVID. He's been tested a number of times. I feel for Melbourne Football Club as well. They had a good win last week. They held on. They've now had to miss last week's game. Do Essendon forfeit the match? Should they be punished and have the 4 points taken away from them and given to Melbourne? The match will be rescheduled at some point. It'll be a midweek fixture. So that again throws the fixture into some sort of disarray.
Last but not least, George, your tip and margin for tonight's game between Sydney and the Bulldogs at the SCG?
Well, I'm tipping the Western Bulldogs by 32 points.
We'll be back on the other side with round 4 previews. You are watching the Multicultural AFL Footy Show. Welcome back. As we look at round 4, Thursday night's game comes from the SCG from the Coat Hanger City. Sydney take on the Bulldogs. Friday, the GWS Giants at home play the Magpies. And on Saturday, we have Port Power up against the West Coast from Carrara. The Saints host Richmond at Marvel. Essendon and Carlton tangle at the MCG, while the Late Show at Marvel will feature the Gold Coast and Fremantle. What are your thoughts, Javier?
Well, I believe Sydney and Western Bulldogs is going to be a good game. But whoever is going to win is going to be more accurate in front of goals. I know it sort of applies on every game,
isn't it?
but these two teams, I can see them fighting very hard in the midfield and putting a lot of pressure on each other. Who can survive that pressure and then still able to be kick in front of goals? I think that's the team who's going to win. And to me, I believe at SCG, I'm just giving advantage to Sydney at the moment in that game. And moving on to the next one, Giants, they are in very bad form at the moment. And on the other hand, if we say Collingwood, they are up. They're up there. They've got their tails up at the moment. The way they're playing, the way they're gelling together, there is absolutely no reason that they can't beat GWS and GWS unless they become complacent or something, which I don't think. Looks like they are believing in themselves for this season, and they're gonna smash GWS in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that Collingwood, like you said, they've got their tails up. It looks like that. It's like a belief that was sort of missing last season. I think that last season they were probably a little bit arrogant, thinking that, well, they were so close to the year before, they can do it this time around. But there seems to be a greater sense of belief and purpose to Collingwood at this moment. I mean, granted, they did play St Kilda, who aren't developed as well as Collingwood are. This will be a good test against GWS because GWS, they need to really step up. They've had some really bad performances of late. Look, we all thought that they were going to beat the Western Bulldogs, but at the same time, we expected GWS to play better than what they did against the Bulldogs because all they did was just fight. And the Bulldogs, credit to them, they just head down, bum up, and they just play proper footy. So I still have a lot of doubts with GWS. I think Collingwood are just going to be too good. And the game between Sydney and the Bulldogs, well, that's going to be an interesting one because I'm still not 100% convinced about the Western Bulldogs.
What?
Well, yeah, look, they did well against GWS, but then again, GWS, they're not exactly firing in on all cylinders, and they did have a really bad loss against St Kilda, who aren't the best at the moment. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back at the SCG, because the Sydney are the opposite of GWS. GWS are overly physical, whereas Sydney are very technical. They love to sort of keep things off, so to speak, and very ultra defensive to a fault. So I think that Sydney will be too good for Western Bulldogs, but it'll be a good test for the Bulldogs just to see where they are at the moment.
Yeah, with the other games, I believe it's going to be Port Adelaide. West Coast, they still need to prove a lot. So I'm going to just go with Port Adelaide at the moment. And St Kilda and Richmond Tigers, I believe it has the potential to be a good game too. And Richmond need to wake up. And I think they will. They were a bit complacent to me as in the last game. So it will be Richmond for me in this game. And then after that, we don't know with Essendon what's going to happen. Yeah. So if they come on, how many players they're going to be. I think I'm going to give Carlton an edge in that game. And in Gold Coast, I'm not tipping against them at this stage, unless it's like a team like Collingwood or something. It's Gold Coast.
Yeah, no, well, look, Gold Coast, they've been really great. I mean, we did say last week how they have these strong starts and then fade really badly, but this time around it just seems different. It seems like this time around, I think that they've really started to show some great confidence and ability in themselves. And Matthew Rowell, I mean, he's a star. In all seriousness, I think he might be ahead on the Brownlow medal count, really.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
He could possibly, and it's only 3 games in his career.
Yeah.
But he's an absolute gun, and Gold Coast, they're just playing so good at the moment. Gold Coast easily for me. Essendon Carlton, that's going to be an interesting one, because we don't know what's with the Essendon game. But Carlton, I think that game against Geelong, that was the one that they really needed. And if they beat Essendon, which I think they will, who knows what could happen after that, but I think that they could win that one. St Kilda versus Richmond, well, yeah. Richmond are doing badly, but not that badly to lose against St Kilda. I would love it if St Kilda will win, but I'm not 100% sure. So I think Richmond will win, but boy, do St Kilda need to work on their defence in particular, because that was a really bad performance against Collingwood. They really need a boost against Richmond, but I think Richmond just too strong. And Port Adelaide against West Coast, well, West Coast, they don't want to be at Queensland. You can just tell they want to get out of there. They're just not playing the way that they normally play. I think they might be a little bit too used to playing at home. But a team like West Coast, they should be doing much better. But Port Adelaide, they're flying under the radar. A lot of people are ignoring Port Adelaide, much to their peril, because I think Port Adelaide, they're surprising a lot of people at the moment, and they're going to win comfortably against West Coast.
I'm feeling very sad that we have to tip against our teams, though.
Hey, we're unbiased. How's that? You know?
Moving on to Sunday's matches, where Brisbane at the Gabba will encounter the bottom of the ladder, Adelaide Crows. Melbourne with a long rest play Geelong at the MCG, while Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium will try and make back-to-back wins against North Melbourne.
Hawthorn versus North Melbourne, that's going to be an interesting game. I keep saying I think that Hawthorn have the potential to have a really good season. The players that they have are quite, well, we all know how good of a team Hawthorn is, and the coach, Alistair Clarkson, he's just second to none. He's an amazing coach. However, North Melbourne, they're going to surprise a few people, I think. You know, they did have that disappointment against Sydney. Very inaccurate in front of goals those past few games, but they could spring the surprise against Hawthorn. I don't think so this time around. I think Hawthorn are just too strong. So Hawthorn for me. Melbourne versus Geelong. Again, Melbourne we don't know, but Geelong, they have to bounce back after that really bad performance. So I think Geelong might win that one. Brisbane versus Adelaide. Well, Brisbane, easily. I mean, Adelaide, they are just a shambles. They are in a crisis. And Brisbane, at home, you can't tip against them. Yeah,
I agree with all the tips. Just that I want to add that I believe Alistair Clarkson has got a plan. When he lost to Geelong, he said that it wasn't that Geelong played well or so. It was like they played really bad. Yeah. So he bounced back. Now he got Diego Mira back. I believe Hawks, they've got some plans this year. So yeah, they're going to do very well this year.
Which brings us to my tip selections, and this week I'm going to pick Western Bulldogs, Collingwood, Port Adelaide, St Kilda, Carlton, Gold Coast Suns, Brisbane, Geelong, and the Hawks. That's all we have time for this week, but before we go, have a look at the awesome power of the Brisbane Lions.
Some run-throughs now. I think he wants to come back on.
Hearn took a really good mark and then he got run down by Cam Rayner.
In fact, young player just dumped it long. He might turn out okay. Jared Berry's got a good look at goal. And he's kicked another one, Berry. Chris Fagan loves it. Knew they were going to face a big challenge. Dane Zorko laid out. That was a really big omission, and the side stood up big time. McCluggage, Lachie Neale, they want more. Can Lachie Neale deliver it? Another goal to Brisbane.
We'll be back next week with more AFL reviews and previews. You can also watch our show on Aurora Foxtel on Saturdays at midday or on YouTube. You can listen to the NEMBC radio podcast and the AFL news in 8 languages on select national multicultural radio stations and the CRN satellite network, as well as the NEMBC's weekly footy report and tip selections on the NEMBC website. I am Vanessa Gatica.
I'm Harbi Singh.
I'm Gabriel D'Angelo.
Thank you for watching. See you next week.